The Archean Empire had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, their crystalline ships gliding between the stars like ancient leviathans. They saw themselves as the shepherds of younger races, the guardians of order, and the arbiters of technological progress. Earth, to them, was nothing more than an amusing footnote, a world of scriptured ships and primitive fusion drives, barely worth the effort of regular surveillance. That's exactly what Admiral Sarah Chen wanted them to think. Deep within the asteroid belt of humanity's home system, hidden in the shadows of countless spinning rocks, the largest engineering project in human history was nearing completion. The Phoenix Initiative had begun 20 years ago, when Chen was just a junior officer. She remembered the day clearly. The day the Archeans had publicly laughed at Earth's latest attempt to join the Galactic Council. "Your ships," the Archean ambassador had said, his crystalline features catching the light, "are like children's toys. Come back in a few centuries, when you've learned to properly harness quantum mechanics." They never bothered to look deeper, never questioned why Earth continued to present outdated technology at every diplomatic meeting, never wondered why a species known for its relentless innovation seemed content to lag centuries behind. The truth floated before Chen now, a darkness against the stars. The ETS Defiant didn't gleam like Archean ships. It didn't announce its presence with proud arrays of crystal spires. Instead, it absorbed light, its metamaterial hull bending radiation around itself like water flowing around a stone. The ship was humanity's masterpiece, not because it copied Archean technology, but because it rejected it entirely. "Final systems check complete, Admiral," Commander Rodriguez reported from his station. The bridge of the Defiant was unlike anything in the galaxy. No holographic displays, no crystalline control interfaces. Instead, neural interfaces connected the crew directly to the ship's quantum computer core, while wall-mounted displays showed tactical data through augmented reality overlays. "Status of the Prometheus drive?" Chen asked, her neural link providing the answer even as she spoke. The question was mere formality, a habit from the old days, operating within expected parameters. "The quantum vacuum bubble is stable, and the dark energy tap is functioning at optimal levels." The Prometheus drive was their trump card. While the Archeans had mastered quantum mechanics, humanity had gone in a different direction. They'd learned to manipulate the fabric of space-time itself, creating propulsion systems that didn't so much move through space as reshape it. The principles would have seemed like madness to the Archeans, whose rigid crystalline technology was as inflexible as their society. Chen allowed herself a small smile. 20 years of deception, of playing the backward civilization, had bought them the time they needed. The Archeans' own arrogance had become their greatest weakness. They'd dismissed humanity's potential because it didn't fit their understanding of how technology should progress. "Begin Phase 1, Chen ordered, her words triggering a cascade of automated responses throughout the ship. "Let's show them what humanity can really do." The Defiant's engines came to life, not with the bright flare of conventional drives, but with a subtle distortion of space around the ship. They would begin with small demonstrations, hints of capability that would seem like anomalies to Archean sensors. A patrol ship detecting impossible speeds, a mining colony reporting unusual energy signatures. Like a master player in a game of chess, humanity would place its pieces carefully before revealing their true strategy. As the ship accelerated toward its first target, Shen thought about all the other projects hidden throughout the solar system. The Defiant was just the beginning. In shipyards concealed within Mercury's crater shadows, inside Jupiter's radiation-swept moons, and deep beneath Mars' polar ice caps, humanity's real fleet was taking shape. The Archeans had ruled for 10,000 years, their technology unchanged, their methods static. They'd forgotten a crucial lesson that humanity had learned through countless struggles. True strength lies not in perfecting a single path, but in the ability to forge new ones. "Approaching jump point," Rodriguez announced, "ready to initiate first contact protocol." Chen nodded, feeling the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. Proceed, Commander. Let's give the galaxy something new to talk about. The Defiant slipped into quantum space, leaving behind the last traces of humanity's mask of mediocrity. The game was about to begin, and the Archeans didn't even know they were playing. The Archean border outpost Crystalline Vigil hung in space, like a frozen explosion of light, its crystalline surfaces refracting starlight in complex patterns. Inside, Senior Observer Tix 427 reviewed the latest sensor data with growing unease. For the third time this cycle, something had triggered the quantum disturbance detectors before vanishing without a trace. Impossible readings again, his subordinate reported, manipulating the crystalline control matrix with practiced gestures. Energy signatures that violate known physics parameters, but they disappear before we can get a lock. Tix 427's crystalline features shifted in what passed for a frown among his species. The Archean Empire had mapped every possible expression of quantum mechanics over their 10 millennia of dominance. These readings suggested something else entirely, something that shouldn't exist. Aboard the Defiant, Admiral Chen watched the Archean outpost through the ship's quantum sensors. The vessel hung in the void, completely invisible to conventional detection methods. The neural interface fed tactical data directly into her consciousness, allowing her to perceive the complex dance of energies surrounding the outpost. "They're adjusting their sensor grid again," Rodriguez reported, his thoughts flowing through the ship's neural network. "Trying to compensate for the quantum wake we left behind." Chen nodded, feeling a deep satisfaction. Phase 1 was proceeding exactly as planned. Each carefully orchestrated appearance and disappearance added another piece to the puzzle, a puzzle the Archeans weren't equipped to solve. "Launch the probe," she ordered. "Let's give them something more substantial to think about." A small object detached from the Defiant's hull, its metamaterial surface as dark as the void. Unlike the sophisticated quantum technology of its parent ship, the probe appeared to be nothing more than a basic sensor platform, exactly the kind of primitive device the Archeans would expect from Earth. Inside the outpost, alarms chimed as the probe appeared on their sensors. Tix 427 straightened, his crystalline form catching the light. Finally, something tangible to investigate. "Earth vessel detected," his subordinate announced. "Primitive configuration, standard emission profile. Appears to be lost. Intercept and detain," Tix 427 ordered, following standard protocol for dealing with human incursions. "Perhaps this will explain the anomalies we've been detecting." A patrol ship detached from the outpost, its crystalline form pristine and imposing. As it approached the probe, Chen watched through the Defiant's sensors, counting down the seconds. The probe waited until the patrol ship was within range before activating its secondary systems. What the Archeans had dismissed as a primitive sensor platform suddenly revealed its true nature. Quantum fields that had been carefully hidden beneath layers of mundane technology burst to life, creating a cascading disruption that rippled through the patrol ship's crystalline systems. Aboard the patrol ship, chaos erupted as control interfaces shattered and quantum matrices collapsed. The vessel didn't explode or break apart. It simply went dark, its crew trapped inside a perfectly intact but completely powerless shell. "Probe effect confirmed," Rodriguez reported with quiet satisfaction. Their quantum control systems never saw it coming. The crystalline technology that makes them so powerful also makes them vulnerable to our quantum disruption fields. Chen allowed herself a moment to appreciate the irony. The Archeans had spent millennia perfecting their crystalline technology, making it more sophisticated, more powerful. But they'd never considered that this very sophistication could be turned against them. "Send the signal," she ordered. "Let them call for help. It's time for Phase 2. As emergency beacons blazed from the disabled patrol ship, the Defiant slipped away, leaving behind more questions than answers. In the outpost, Tix 427 stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. The probe had vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared, but its impact would ripple through the Empire. Somewhere in the vast bureaucracy of the Archean Empire, analysts would begin to notice a pattern. Strange anomalies at the borders, unexplained failures of supposedly perfect systems, and at the center of it all, crude human technology that somehow didn't behave the way it should. Send word to High Command, Chen instructed as the Defiant prepared for another quantum jump. The Archean response was exactly as predicted. We're ready to begin deploying the rest of the fleet. Throughout the solar system, hidden shipyards stirred to life. The Defiant had proven the concept. Now it was time to show the galaxy that humanity's long silence hadn't been submission, it had been preparation. Multiple quantum signatures detected from the direction of Earth, Rodriguez reported, monitoring the long-range sensors. The Phoenix Initiative is launching. Humanity's chains are finally breaking. Chen smiled, knowing that across the galaxy, more Archean outposts would soon face the same confusion, the same impossible readings, the same devastating revelations. The empire that had dismissed humanity was about to learn a harsh lesson about the danger of underestimating those they considered primitive. The grand chamber of the Archean High Command sparkled with crystalline light, its vast geometric patterns reflecting the agitation of the assembled commanders. High Marshal Kick 001 stood at the center, his crystalline form pulsing with barely contained fury as he reviewed the latest reports. 57 outposts, he announced, his voice resonating through the crystal chamber. 57 of our most advanced monitoring stations, reduced to silence in less than a standard month. And the humans deny all knowledge. Their ambassador maintains their usual stance, another commander responded. Claims their ships are restricted to their local trade routes, suggests pirates or natural phenomena might be responsible. The same tired excuses, delivered with the same apparent humility that had characterized Earth's diplomacy for decades. But something had changed. The patterns were too precise, the targets too carefully chosen. In Earth orbit, the Defiant rejoined the growing fleet of Phoenix-class vessels. Admiral Chen stood on her bridge, watching as the ETS Hyperion and ETS Prometheus took up flanking positions. Each ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, their dark hulls containing technological innovations that the Archeans had never dreamed possible. The Empire is mobilizing their third fleet, Rodriguez reported, neural feeds streaming tactical data through the bridge crew's shared consciousness. 17 capital ships, supported by over 100 smaller vessels. They're finally taking us seriously. About time, Chen replied, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. Deploy the quantum mesh. Let's show them exactly what they're dealing with. Throughout the fleet, ships began transmitting on frequencies that the Archeans had never thought to monitor. The space between the vessels came alive with invisible connections, creating a neural network that spanned kilometers. Each ship became part of a greater whole, their quantum computers linking to form an intelligence that could process battlefield information at speeds that made Archean crystalline computing look primitive. The third fleet emerged from quantum space in a dazzling display of crystalline might. Their massive ships, each one a city-sized monument to Archean superiority, moved into attack formation. High Commander Rix 225 stood on his flagship's bridge, confident in the overwhelming force at his disposal. Attention Earth vessels, he broadcast on all frequencies. You have violated Imperial space and attacked Imperial installations. Surrender immediately or face annihilation. Chen's response came not in words, but in action. The human fleet seemed to dissolve into darkness, their metamaterial hulls bending light until they became invisible to both sensors and sight. The Archean commanders barely had time to register their disappearance before the attack began. The first sign that something was wrong came when the quantum matrices controlling the Third Fleet's weapons began to fail. Systems that had been reliable for millennia suddenly reported impossible errors. Crystal lattices that channeled vast energies started to crack, their perfect structures disrupted by carefully targeted quantum interference. Impossible. Rix 225 whispered as his flagship's systems began to shut down. All around him, the pride of the Archean fleet was being systematically disabled. not destroyed. That would have been less humiliating, but rendered impotent, their mighty weapons and impenetrable shields reduced to dead crystal by technology they couldn't even detect. The human ships reappeared, surrounding the helpless Archean fleet. Their dark hulls now rippled with patterns of light, displaying the full power of their quantum manipulation technology. Chen opened a channel to the Archean flagship. "Your ships are disabled but intact," she announced. "Your crews are unharmed." This demonstration was not meant to destroy, but to educate. "The galaxy is changing, High Commander. The age of crystal is ending." In the Grand Chamber, High Marshal Kick 001 received the news of the Third Fleet's defeat in stunned silence. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just caught up to Archean technology. They'd transcended it entirely, developing an entirely new understanding of physics, while the Empire had stagnated in its crystalline perfection. How long? He demanded of his advisors. How long have they been hiding their true capabilities? But he already knew the answer. Every dismissed report of anomalous readings, every patronizing assessment of Earth's primitive technology, every moment of Archean pride had been carefully cultivated by humanity. They had turned the Empire's own arrogance into a weapon more effective than any quantum device. Chen watched the disabled Archean ships drift in space, their crystalline surfaces no longer gleaming with power. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. "Phase 3 is complete. The Empire now understands that they no longer hold technological supremacy. Whether they can accept this new reality remains to be seen." The quantum mesh hummed with data as the fleet maintained its vigilance. Humanity had revealed its hand. But this was just the beginning. The real question wasn't whether the Archons would retaliate. It was whether their rigid, crystalline minds could adapt to a galaxy where they were no longer the undisputed masters of technology. The news spread across the galaxy like a quantum shockwave. In the bustling trading hubs of the Meridian Cluster, in the ancient halls of the Sylvan Concordat, and in the deep space habitats of the Nomad Collective, all conversations turned to a single topic: humanity's stunning revelation of power. On the frontier world of New Singapore, representatives from a dozen species gathered in a hastily convened summit. The Defiant hung in orbit above them, its dark hull a silent reminder of how much the galaxy had changed. Admiral Chen stood before the assembled delegates, her uniform bearing no rank insignia or medals. Humanity had moved beyond such displays. For millennia, the Archean Empire has enforced technological stagnation. She addressed the gathering. Their crystalline technology was presented as the pinnacle of achievement, the only path worth following. "We are here to show you there are other ways." In the audience, Ambassador Zix 756 of the Archean Empire sat rigid, his crystalline form dulled with barely contained fury. Besides him, representatives from traditionally neutral species leaned forward with unconcealed interest. The holographic display activated, showing the quantum mesh technology in action. "We didn't develop this to conquer or control," Chen continued. "We developed it because humanity has always sought new paths, new possibilities. The Empire's greatest mistake was assuming that their way was the only way." In the Archean Empire's capital system, the High Council convened an emergency session. Reports flooded in from across their territory. Client species were beginning to question centuries-old technological restrictions. The Empire's grip on quantum technology, once their greatest source of control, was rapidly becoming meaningless. "The humans must be stopped," High Marshal Kick 001 declared to his peers. "We must mobilize the Grand Fleet, show the galaxy that defiance has consequences." But for the first time in living memory, other voices in the council dared to dissent. Perhaps, ventured and younger counselor, their crystalline form shimmering with nervous energy, "We should consider adaptation rather than confrontation. The humans have proven that our understanding of physics is incomplete." Back on the Defiant, Commander Rodriguez monitored the quantum communications network that now spanned human space. The neural interface fed him information about diplomatic overtures from dozens of species, many of whom had never dared to openly communicate with Earth before. The Sylvan Concordat is requesting technical advisors, he reported to Chen when she returned to the bridge. The Nomad Collective wants to discuss joint research initiatives. Even some of the Empire's own colony worlds are reaching out through back channels. Chen nodded, watching the tactical display where hundreds of quantum signatures mark the movement of ships throughout the galaxy. The Archean Empire's trade routes were already showing signs of disruption as their client species began to assert independence. The Empire's response, she asked, though she already knew through her neural link. Exactly as predicted. They're mobilizing the Grand Fleet, but they're facing internal resistance for the first time in their history. Some of their own commanders are questioning the wisdom of confrontation. In the depths of human space, more Phoenix-class ships emerged from hidden shipyards. Each vessel represented a different approach to quantum mechanics, a different interpretation of physics that the Archons had never considered. Humanity hadn't just developed new technology. They had broken free from the very paradigms that had constrained galactic development for millennia. The quantum mesh registered a priority alert. A group of Archean warships had broken formation from the Grand Fleet, their crystalline hulls dark. As Chen watched, they transmitted a clear message. They wished to defect. "It's happening faster than we anticipated," Rodriguez observed. "The Empire's unity is fracturing." Chen's expression remained neutral, but inwardly she felt a deep satisfaction. The plan had never been about military victory. It had been about showing the galaxy that change was possible. The Archeans had maintained power not through force alone, but through the belief that their way was the only way forward. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. "Tell them to prepare for Phase 4. The Empire won't fall to our weapons. It will fall to ideas. The very concept that there might be other paths to advancement is more devastating to them than any quantum disruption field." As the Defiant moved to rendezvous with the defecting Archean ships, Shen reflected on how far humanity had come. They had hidden their light for decades, playing the role of technological primitives while developing something the Empire could never have imagined. A future without crystalline constraints, where innovation could flow in any direction. The galaxy was changing, one quantum ripple at a time, and humanity, long dismissed as backwards and primitive, was leading the way into an uncertain but limitless future. The Archean Grand Fleet assembled at the edge of their core systems, a vast armada of crystalline ships that stretched across light minutes of space. 10,000 years of empire had culminated in this moment. High Marshal Kick 001 stood aboard his flagship, the Crystal Throne, watching as the last loyal vessels took their positions. 300 capital ships, his adjutant reported. The largest fleet ever assembled in Imperial history. But even this unprecedented show of force felt hollow. A quarter of their fleet had already defected, taking with them centuries of accumulated knowledge. The Empire was bleeding power not through defeat, but through choice. Light years away, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiant, now accompanied by a fleet that represented the combined technological innovation of humanity and their new allies. The quantum mesh had evolved, incorporating insights from a dozen species who had broken free from Archean constraints. "The Grand Fleet is moving," Rodriguez announced, his consciousness merged with the fleet's neural network. "They're taking a direct route to Earth. No attempt at subterfuge." Chen nodded, feeling the gathered strength of their combined forces through the neural interface. The Sylvan Concordat had contributed their biological computing systems, the Nomad Collective their expertise in dark energy manipulation. Even the defected Archean ships had been modified, their crystalline technology integrated with human quantum systems in ways their original builders had never imagined. "All ships, execute Phase 4, Chen commanded. The order rippled through the quantum mesh, and space itself seemed to hold its breath. The Archean fleet erupted from quantum space near Earth's orbit, their crystalline weapons charged to unleash unprecedented destruction. But they emerged into emptiness. Earth, the moon, every human installation in the solar system, all had vanished. "Impossible," Kick 001 breathed, his crystalline form clouding with confusion. An entire solar system cannot simply disappear. The answer came in the form of a quantum ripple that spread across space like a wave on a cosmic ocean. The human fleet materialized around the Archean Armada. But they weren't alone. Space itself folded and twisted, revealing vessels hidden in dimensional pockets that the Empire's sensors couldn't detect. This is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Fleet. Her transmission reached every ship in the Archean formation. What you're witnessing is the Prometheus Protocol, humanity's greatest achievement. We haven't just learned to manipulate quantum mechanics. We've learned to rewrite the local laws of physics themselves. As if to demonstrate her words, the quantum mesh activated at full power. The space around the Archean fleet began to change. Their carefully calibrated weapons found their energy dispersing harmlessly into subspace. Their quantum communications encountered laws of physics that made their crystalline technology behave in entirely new ways. You could have joined us in exploration, Chen continued. Instead of enforcing stagnation, you could have embraced change. Even now, that option remains open. On the crystal throne, Kik-001 watched as more of his ships broke formation. The younger commanders, those who had grown up hearing whispers of change, were the first to lower their weapons. The Empire's perfect unity was shattering not under the force of humanity's weapons, but under the weight of possibility itself. The age of crystal is over, Chen announced to all ships, friend and foe alike. But this isn't a human victory. It's a victory for every species that dares to think differently, to explore new paths, to challenge the assumption that any one way is the only way. The quantum mesh hummed with power as Earth's solar system phased back into normal space, revealing cities and installations transformed by technologies that blended approaches from a dozen different species. This was humanity's true achievement, not the ability to outfight the Empire, but the vision to show the galaxy that diversity of thought was strength, not weakness. Stand down your weapons, Chen offered one final time. Join us not as subjects or rulers, but as fellow explorers. The universe is vast, and we've only begun to understand its possibilities. In the end, the Empire didn't fall to weapons or warfare. It transformed, its rigid crystalline structure gradually dissolving into something new and unprecedented. The species that had once ruled through technological superiority learned to adapt, to change, to grow. Years later, Chen stood in the grand chamber of the new Galactic Concordat, watching representatives from hundreds of species share their discoveries. The quantum mesh had evolved into a galaxy-wide network of shared knowledge, each species contributing their unique perspective to the greater whole. Ready to retire yet, Admiral? Rodriguez asked, now a senior diplomat in his own right. Chen smiled, feeling the neural network pulse with discoveries and innovations from across the stars. Retire? This isn't an ending, Commander. It's barely even a beginning. Above them, the crystalline architecture of the former Imperial Palace had been transformed. It now incorporated elements from every member species, a physical representation of how far they'd come from the days of rigid uniformity. The Empire of Crystal had given way to something far more precious, an alliance of infinite possibility. Humanity had changed the galaxy not by being the strongest or the most advanced, but by being the first to truly understand that progress comes in many forms. The stars stretched out before them, each one holding new mysteries, new approaches, new ways of thinking waiting to be discovered. And that, perhaps, was the greatest victory of all.